Today, boys, we are going to be reacting to his story. And apparently, this is the popular growing YouTube channels out there. So let's react to his first short. Let's go. Let's do it.
My twin brother Chris and I were 9 when we learned Morse code. We
Morse
tapped
code?
messages under the dinner table
Maybe we should
when Mom
start doing
told us
that,
to
guys.
stop talking
Yeah,
and tap
no,
through
we're
the
not
wall
doing that.
between our
I don't wanna
bedrooms
talk
every
to you,
night.
not
When
you
Chris
suck.
got into a car accident
serious?
and the doctor said he'd never wake up, I pulled
What?
up a chair next to his bed, took his hand, and tapped. Are you there? Nothing. But I came back the next afternoon and tapped
Oh,
again.
so you're learning
Before I
Morse
left, I always
code.
said the same thing.
What is
See you
Morse
tomorrow,
code?
Chris.
No,
A week
'cause
later,
it's-
Chris's
it-
fingers
it
twitched
is
against
when,
mine,
you're
and I
tapping
almost fell out of
on
my chair.
someone's
I
finger
grabbed a
and
nurse,
they
and she
try
barely
back to
looked
the
up.
answer.
They're
No, but
reflexes.
shut up.
It doesn't
I
mean
answered you,
anything.
don't
I bought a
worry.
notebook the next day and started writing down every single one. 4 months in, Mom watched me scribbling and said, "How long are you gonna keep doing this?"
Nah.
Until he taps back. He's not gonna tap back. You're talking
nah.
to a corpse. Dad lasted a
corpse.
few more months before he pulled me into the hallway. We need to talk about donating your brother's organs. His fingers move every time I hold his hand, Dad.
They're
The
going
nurses
to
said
steal
those
his
are
organs.
reflexes. Stop getting your hopes up, son. I don't care what the nurses say.
Bro, they're
I'm not
messing up his
donating my
dreams.
brother's
It's his
organs. But
brother.
a week later, my parents called to have Chris transferred to a long-term facility to die and scheduled a meeting to sign the papers.
A long-term
The afternoon before the
facility?
meeting, I
Everyone just
tapped
shut
into
up.
his palm like always, but this time, something tapped back. Short, short, short. Long, long, long. Short, short, short. S-O-S.
He's
I
responding.
grabbed his hand. Chris, if that's you, squeeze once. He squeezed so hard my knuckles cracked. I stormed into the
goodness.
meeting room and told them my brother just responded to me. The caseworker said, "This is very common with families who aren't ready to let go."
Alright, guys, let's get back into it.
The table. You're not signing anything until you come see for yourself.
Oh
I
my
walked them
goodness.
to Chris's bed and grabbed his hand. Ask him anything. The caseworker asked what year it was. Chris squeezed out the answer. Count
Oh my
to
goodness.
5. 5 perfect squeezes.
Oh!
His mother's name, tapped out letter by letter. By the 10th question, she said, "He's still
Oh my
alive. We can't
goodness.
move him." Weeks later,
He's
I asked Chris
responding.
what kept him fighting when
Yo,
everyone
he's
gave up. Heard
responding.
Mom call me a corpse. Heard Dad say donate my organs.
I
Heard all of
knew
them
it.
leave, except you. I asked why. I wanted to see you too.
Yo, that was the first short, and apparently this has 1.9 million likes. So boys, we should go to the next one.
Yes, sir.
Boom.
The flight attendant slipped me a napkin that said, "The pilot isn't who he says he is. Meet me in the back to talk." I knew she chose to tell me because of the military dog tags around my neck. I folded the napkin and slid it into my pocket, and that's when the captain's voice came over the intercom.
Oh my
Good morning,
goodness.
folks. This is Captain Hopkins, expecting smooth skies to Chicago, but something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. I waited 2 minutes and casually walked to the back, not knowing what to expect. The
goodness
flight
gracious,
attendant
this
was
is
there
crazy.
with a man holding up a police badge.
Man.
The man whispered, "I'm glad you're here. I'm an undercover cop." I knew something was
Undercover?
wron straight away. The flight attendant
Guys, this
whispered,
is
"I've
to,
flown with
the
Captain
Dean,
Hopkins
guys,
for
without
6 years.
talking,
I don't exactly
ruining
know
it."
what's wrong, but I know that's not Hopkins, and we're flying the wrong way." She showed me the flight map of where we were heading. The plane is heading toward an abandoned airport. I leaned over the map. My body was pumping with adrenaline because it was the perfect place to crash a plane. There's an empty space
What?
above the pilot's room. I can climb up and listen to what the pilot and co-pilot are planning through the ceiling. Take my number. If you can tell there's something fishy going on, text me one word, now. That's the signal to move. And to distract everyone while I climbed above the ceiling, the flight attendant made an announcement on the speakers to tell everyone to keep their seatbelts on. Through the cracks, I could hear 2 men in the pilot's room talking. 15 years ago today, our brother died because of Captain Hopkins. Now we get to crash his plane with him tied up on it while we impersonate him. I texted
What?
the undercover cop. Now,
Oh
the
my
cart
goodness.
slammed into the pilot's room door, and the cop kicked it open. I dropped through the ceiling and tackled the fake pilot out of his seat. The
that
cop
punch
pinned
was
the
crazy.
co-pilot to the floor. The flight
Why are you
attendant
talking
grabbed
about
the
like
radio.
that?
"Mayday, our pilot is gone. We need help
Yeah,
landing right
yeah,
now."
we're
She
cooked.
looked at me. "Find Hopkins, the
They're
actual
cooked.
pilot.
They need
He
to
has
find
be on this
Hopkins."
plane somewhere." I sprinted to the back of the plane, checking every door. I
Just
yanked
check.
open the closet next to the bathrooms, and Captain Hopkins was inside with his hands
goodness.
tied and tape across his mouth. I ripped the tape off. "Get me to the controls." He ran to the front and dropped into the pilot's chair. He grabbed the wheel. "Tower, this is the real Captain Hopkins. I'm landing this plane." When we finally landed, the cops dragged the brothers off in handcuffs. The flight attendant came up to me in the aisle. I pulled the napkin out of my pocket and held it up. "You saved 200 lives with this." She smiled and took it back.
Alright, guys, that was the second short. Now, let's go to the third one.
Every time we heard a knock on the front door, my dad would yell, "Stealth mode," and we had
Okay,
30
stealth
seconds
mode.
to kill every light in the house.
What?
My brother and I would race through the rooms, flipping switches, yanking
Flipping
cords,
switches? Where are
shutting
they
off the
flipping switches
TV
for?
mid-show, while
I do
some
not
guy
know.
outside banged on the
Is that
front
on
door
TV?
yelling, "I know you're in there, buddy." Dad timed us. Once everything was dark, no
Okay.
talking, no moving, no looking out the windows. We'd sit there
guys,
until
it was
Dad
shots.
did his owl hoot, which meant all clear. Sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes almost an hour. Afterwards, he'd high-five us and go, "Real ninjas couldn't do better. He told us stealth mode was top secret. Never tell your teachers, your friends, nobody. Other people wouldn't understand. For years, I believed him. When I was 8, I asked Dad why we had to hide so much. He said some annoying guy kept bothering our family, and stealth mode was how we dealt with him. I felt proud we had a secret skill that could outsmart bad guys. By the time I was 10, I heard the voice outside yell something about a bet and $20. I tugged Dad's sleeve and whispered, "Is the bad guy trying to steal our money?" Dad shushed me so hard I flinched. When I was 12, I broke the window rule, peeked through the blinds, and saw a completely normal guy in a polo shirt standing on the porch rubbing his forehead. He didn't look like a criminal. He looked like someone's tired uncle. At 13, I told Dad I was just going to open the door and tell the guy to leave us alone. The color left his face. You absolutely cannot do that. That was the first time stealth mode didn't feel like a game.
Alright, boys, we're going back into
Mouth was, so now he knows someone's home. Then he turned off the kitchen light and got under the table. We were never in danger. My dad just lost a bet because of the greatest of all time.
Nah, LeBron James. Alright, boys, let's go to the next one.
My daughter came home crying with an F because her teacher doesn't know what color blood is. The first time I
blood is-
realized
Whoa.
something was wrong, Riley came home from school holding out her arm. Look, Dad, you can see the blue blood in my veins right here. She traced the blue lines under her skin with her finger. I put down my coffee and looked at it.
Oh, no, yeah, that's
Sweetheart,
nasty.
That's not true. Blood is always red because of hemoglobin. It's just darker red in your veins.
Hemoglobin?
Her face
What is
scrunched
that?
up, but
No,
Mrs. Miller
blood
showed
is
us a
red 'cause
whole
it's
PowerPoint
red.
about it. She even
Maybe
had
because she
diagrams
poked
from a
herself or
science book.
something.
The next
Or-
morning,
or
I
hurt
packed my
herself
work
or-
scrubs in my bag.
put a
I'm an
knife
ER
in her.
nurse at Mercy
I don't know.
General, and I was
But
working the
I guess I
afternoon
just
shift
keep watching.
anyway. I sent Mrs. Miller an email asking if I could do a quick presentation about blood for career day that afternoon. She loved the idea. When I arrived, Mrs. Miller introduced me as Riley's dad who works at the hospital. 28 kids stared up at me
I
from
will
their
be
desks.
embarrassed.
I heard you guys learned that blood is blue inside your body, I said. The entire class nodded enthusiastically.
You're
Mrs. Miller beamed
stupid.
from her desk in the
Blood
corner.
is
I pulled
red.
out a blood collection tube from my pocket and held it up. This is what we use to draw blood at the hospital. Notice something. The tube creates a vacuum. No oxygen inside at all. I paused. When we draw blood with these, it never touches oxygen until we pop the cap off. I showed them photos on my phone of sealed blood tubes. See? Still red. Mrs. Miller's smile started fading. She shifted in her chair and cleared her throat. A boy raised his hand and pointed
Yo,
to
I'll
their
be clearing
science
my throat
textbook.
too,
But our
I'm trying
textbook
to
says
think
it's
about
blue.
what is he
I picked
talking
up the
about?
book and checked the
that's
publication
kinda
date,
crazy.
1998.
Wait, is
Medicine
this kid
updates
talking
pretty
about?
fast. We used to think lots of things that turned out to be wrong. Mrs.
this
Miller
guy
suddenly
is
stood
so
up from her
good.
desk,
How
her
do you
hands
do
gripping
this?
the edge. Well, thank you for that
It must be
interesting
taking a month to
presentation,
create these
Mr. Johnson,
shorts.
but we need to
Man,
move
they're
on to math
crazy.
now. I nodded and started packing when a girl in the back raised her hand. So our textbook is wrong? The class erupted in whispers.
No,
Mrs.
your
Miller's
brains
jaw
are wrong.
clenched and her voice got
Knuckles,
tight.
shut
The
up.
curriculum says, actually, I interrupted, pulling up the state science standards on my phone. I walked over and turned my phone toward her. The current curriculum specifically mentions this myth as something to correct. She stared at the screen and her eyes narrowed. Her mouth pressed into a thin line and her nostrils flared. Can I speak with you in the hallway? The kids watched as we walked out and the door closed behind us. Do you have any idea how hard it is when parents undermine my authority? Her face was
Your
red and her
authority?
voice was sharp.
You don't
Now
have
they'll
no
question
authority.
everything I say.
Oh,
I
now
kept
you
my
said her
voice calm.
authority. That's
Isn't
crazy.
That exactly what we want them to do? Question things and learn critical thinking. She crossed her arms tightly. I've been teaching for 22 years. I'm not changing my whole
We know,
curriculum because
smart
some
kids.
nurse thinks he knows better than our textbooks.
She
The
thinks
next
he's
day,
so
I
good.
found out Mrs. Miller gave the class a pop quiz. Riley
pop
came home
quiz?
crying, her face red and puffy. Her hands were shaking as she handed me a paper with a
What?
big red F on it. I took a deep breath and felt my jaw tighten as I looked at the question. What color is blood inside the body? Riley had written red, and Mrs. Miller had marked it wrong. I requested a meeting with Principal Davis
Yeah,
and
she's
brought
dumb.
printouts of medical textbooks, the state science standards, and Riley's quiz. The principal called in Mrs. Miller and asked her directly, is blood blue inside the body? After a long pause, Mrs. Miller said, it's what the children understand better. I leaned forward in my chair. My
Alright.
daughter is crying every morning before school because she's afraid of getting Fs for writing down the truth. The next
Alright.
day, the
You
school
this is
replaced their
crazy.
science books.
Nah,
Now
this is
whenever
cool.
Riley learns something new at school, she comes home and asks me, Dad, is this actually true or is it just a Mrs. Miller truth? My daughter
Guys, that's gonna be it for today. We watched every single Here Story videos, and guys, they are so cool. But if you boys enjoyed this awesome video, want to see some more, make sure you like and subscribe.
Bye.